All right, welcome everyone for Daily Algorithm. Today we're going to be solving the highest scoring word. I know this is a Code Wars um, example, and I'm sorry for Owen. I know you don't like Code Wars, but we're almost there to the point where we can start utilizing leak code. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We're going to receive a string, and once we receive a string, we need to figure out what is the highest scoring word. Each letter of a word scores points according to its position in the alphabet. Oh, well, that's pretty cool to know, right? Its position in the alphabet. All right, A being 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, etc. For example, the score of a bad is 8 because A is 1, 2 is B, A is 1 again, and then D is 4. So we get 1 plus 2, which is 3, plus 1, which is 4, plus 4, giving us a total number of 8. So I need to return the highest scoring word as a string. If two words score the same, return the word that appears earliest in the original string. Okay, great. So essentially this tells me this sentence seems pretty important to me. And then all letters will be lowercase and all inputs will be valid. All right, so I don't have to worry about improper inputs. Fantastic. So a couple of things here. One, I want to make sure that I'm looking at a string of words. So this part's actually really important because me being a developer or uh, being used to a specific type of input, I would have expected a list of words, and then I could have iterated through that list of words. But that's not the case here. What I'm getting is a string of words. And if I take a look at the test, we can see that it's actually one solidified string with words inside of it. So I need to figure out a way to separate all of them. So there's edge case number one, right? Or something that I should be taking into consideration is, hey, I need to ensure the string turns into an iterable list. And apparently I can't spell iterable, but that's okay. All right. So there's one thing that I should consider, making sure that I turn it into an iterable list. Now, as I read through this, this looks pretty simple, positions in the string. So my immediate thought is how to keep count of alphabetical positions, right? Like for each letter in the alphabet, how do I want to keep count of that? Do I want to build a dictionary with a key value pair for every letter? Do I just want a list with a key of every letter so that I could just access by index? How do I want to do that, right? And then the other thing that I saw that uh was pretty important to consider is if two word scores are the same, return the word that appears earliest in the string. So here I'm imagining that I'm iterating from left to right. So if I identify a value on the left-hand side, it should not be overwritten or reassigned. Let's go with that one. That should fit, maybe. Let's do it this way. If a later word ties in score. All right, so there you go. I should only reassign it if it's greater, but I should not be reassigned if a later word ties in score. Okay, awesome. Can anyone else think of, maybe some answers to these, or how could we go about solving these three little edge cases that I've been able to identify? Or does anyone else have any edge cases that I failed to consider?
I was just going to do it. I was thinking of a dictionary for number two to determine the score of each letter. Um, I don't know if that's the easiest way, but that's what I was thinking was just creating a dictionary.
Okay, so maybe a dictionary. Okay. Let's hear
Or
it.
I was gonna say to ensure that uh turning the string into an iterable list that it keeps you return the word that's passed through and not just like the individual letter, so it doesn't end up being one letter in a 4 letter word.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to that. what Tristan said, but you can use the dot split method and then
Yeah.
yeah, it'll split it by
Yeah, split it, and then once you have the answer, join it back into a string and return that string of whatever that word is.
Okay. So I'm going to be splitting it. And I believe split, we could either utilize dot split to just turn it all into a list, or we could pass it into a list and that would divide it into individual characters. But I think split may also take in a parameter that we can utilize to divide and get just a list of words. So maybe that's something to consider when we're working within our teams. Okay, so we have ensure that we have words and not independent letters inside of our list. Maybe we can utilize the split method. For keeping count of alphabetical positions, we have maybe a dictionary, which is great because it provides us access, right? Direct access in key value pairs.
Does ASCII work in this case as well? I just brought it up, but I'm not sure if that would be an assist.
Yeah, that's a great analyzation, right? So we have maybe utilizing the ASCII values to consider alphabetical letters. Maybe we have to analyze what's the pattern for these letters, right? Because if you run an ASSI value for A, I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe that it's a three-digit number that is returned. So maybe we have to figure out what mathematical operation we have to do to that three-digit number to get it to be equal to 1. And maybe, there's a pattern for each one of those independent letters, and we have to figure out that pattern so that we can subtract them and get their corresponding value. But this is definitely a great tool, especially if we don't want to write letter by letter the entire alphabet, right? So that's definitely something to look into as well. All right. And then this last portion about reassignment, what if statement does that look like? Or how would I write that if statement?
You could instead just use a variable, assign that variable like to the largest word, and then write an if statement saying if variable or if word is greater than that highest scoring variable, then add it or replace it.
So you're saying that in one variable, I'm going to be storing both the score and the word. Is that correct?
Just the word, because then you can use dot length or length. Well, this is Python, so length parentheses,
Oh,
and then use that in the if statement.
okay. Does everyone else agree with that? Or is there something that we're missing here?
Well, I just how would you verify like the placement of like what came first?
By just
Like
doing
wouldn't you have to
greater
look at
than,
like the index or something?
you'd loop through it from left to right. So if it appears first, it has to be greater than, not greater than or equal to replace it.
So you're saying that essentially for every iteration, we would evaluate both the left and right hand value again and again and again, right? So that's maybe this is a place that we could reconsider how we're going to go about solving this. But this is good for starting code. And currently we are at time. I'm going to go ahead and pause our recording now. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and try to solve this problem here. So I really like the ASSI value idea. But I don't know it off the top of my head. So I'm going to go ahead and look it up. So it looks like the range of ASSI values for uppercase letters A through Z is 65 to 90, and lowercase letters is 97 through 122. So let's go ahead and take a look if I could import ASSI. I don't even know if that's how you do it. Let's see. Python. So it looks like they're within char set. No, that doesn't sound right. Let's see. Ah, they're inside a string. Okay. All right, and let's see how this works. So I could grab ASSII. Okay, that's good, but it's not showing me how to grab their values.
We never tested it, but in our group, we didn't have to import anything. We just used the function ord and then parentheses, and then you put your letter value in there in the parentheses.
Really? Let's see.
I believe so. We didn't test it though. Don't take my word on that.
Okay, so let's grab our words. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, well, inside of, let's do ord, now let's do words, index 0, and let's print this out. I'm just gonna comment out all the tests except for one of them, just to start off my function. Let's go ahead and test this. Let's say PyTest. Oh, I didn't even. Gotta activate that virtual environment. Okay, so we see it at test.py. Great. And index 0 returned 109. So that's M. Let's make sure that A actually returns that value of 97. Okay, it does. And let's make sure that Z returns that value of 122. All right, so it does. That works perfectly. That works fantastic. So let's go ahead and do minus 96, and that should work for M. All right, so I'm not sure where in the alphabet M would fall, but let's say 13. That sounds about right. I'm gonna go ahead and trust that that is correct for now. And let's see. What place in the
Found
alphabet?
it. I counted on my hand. It was 13.
Okay, so it is 13. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I was gonna count on my hand, but I didn't want to do that in camera, so thanks for doing it for me.
No problem. I got you.
All right, so there we go. That's working. We have our pattern. We can tell how to grab the score of a word. Okay, great. Now let's go into splitting our words here. Let's say list of words. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab words dot split, and I'm going to pass in the parameter of an open or a gap. And I'm just going to print list of words here. Let's comment that out. Run our test. That does give me my list of words. Great. I'm going to make another function called evaluate word. And what this is going to do is it's going to take in one specific word and return an integer. So let me go ahead and change that here to a string, and it's going to return an integer. So I'm going to say for letter and word. And let's have a score here, variable to 0. And all I'm going to do is say, all right, I want score to plus equals. And then I'm going to do the function that we discovered here, or that a group was able to discover. Letter, I apologize for not giving you the proper credit, minus 96. And then once it's done iterating through the word, it's going to return the score. Okay, fantastic. So there you go. It goes through the iteration, gets the total score, and returns it. So now we have to have a highest score. So highest score word is equal, and I'm going to actually do a dictionary here. that has word set to list of words at index 0. So I'm just going to initialize it with the very first word. And then I'm going to do score, which is going to be evaluate word. And I forgot to put a comma here. With list of words at index 0. So that should start my very first iteration there. And then finally, I'm just going to go through a for loop. So for word and list of words from index 1, because I already initialized it with index 0. I don't need to go over index 0 again. I could start at index 1, and I know that the first number is inclusive while the second is exclusive. And then I can say score be equal to evaluate word and pass in word as a parameter. And I can say if highest score word at score is less than the current score, then I can say highest scoring word is equal to, pass in the dictionary one more time, but now it's just going to be the word. Oh, and then the score will be the score. I don't need an else statement because I don't really need it to do anything else. And finally, I can now just return highest score word. All right, that was a lot of assumptions, so we'll see how this works. Hopefully this works correctly. Let's go ahead and print our highest scoring word every iteration, just so that we know that it's going through it. All right. We execute our PyTest test suite. That worked on our very first try. Let's take a look at the output that comes out. Where's my captured output? Capture steady output. Oh, it's not showing me all of it. Let me run this -s command here. There you go. So -s command, it actually shows me all of my print statements there. So the very first one was the word of man with score of 28. We can see that it stays at the word of man until it encounters taxi with the score of 54. And then taxi stays the entire time. Great. So everything should be working for all of the other words, right? We were able to evaluate them. We could make a function for reassignment, but we really don't need to. If there's anything that I would change is instead of doing a reassignment for the entire dictionary, I would just do a reassignment for the keys. So maybe that's something that I can clean up later on. Let me test all of these other tests that we have and ensure that it works. And it does. All of our tests have passed. Great. Let me clean this up a little bit, where we're going to do word is equal to word. Now let's do highest scoring word score is equal to the current word, or excuse me, score. Oh. Let's run that PyTest one more time to ensure that it still works, and it does. And that is how I would complete this challenge. I would make a helper function to keep track of the score, and then one specific function to iterate through the list of words. All right, does anyone have any questions over the function that I've just created and how it works? Let's hear it, Owen.
With you putting in that other function, are you pausing the one function while it goes through evaluate word? So that way it's not like a nested for loop.
That's correct. So it is essentially a nested for loop. So this isn't O of n. This is definitely O of n squared because here it's doing a nested for loop. So it goes through this for loop, and once it gets to evaluate word, the nested for loop gets evaluated as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? All right. Any suggestions for making it better?
I was gonna ask if there's like a certain algorithm or something like would make it like make the time complexity better, but I'm not really sure what I don't have any ideas of what we could use to make it better.
Yeah, that's a good and it's a good question. I really don't know of any algorithm that would help us in this case, since I would have to check every single word and compare it to the initial word before moving on to the next one. Um, and I can't really think of a way that I could create a score for all of them at once so that we could just compare all of them and then have the comparison. I think this would be my answer that I would turn in during an interview, but maybe there is a way that we could refactor this to work a little better. Honestly, this ORD here is saving us a considerable amount of time. Otherwise, we would have had to had a list or a dictionary, and that would have been a whole mess. So this ORD function is definitely something useful to use.
On line 9, words dot split, it defaults to spaces, so you don't need anything in the parentheses.
Oh, really? Let's check that out. Wow. Awesome. Thank you. Let me go ahead and print it out so we can see it. Nice. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.